I think this may be either the largest and or the only synagogue in Vilnius. Down the street from Les Halles, or the hall, the market, on my Saturday walkabout with a specific agenda to go to the Vilnius Church of the Holy something or other, and then to the KGB museum, and then to find the kindergarten that used to be the Jewish synagogue that was torn down. I was just curious about this large archway entry, so I walked back in there, but it's all closed in with buildings. My guess is that it went to a church or something that I can't see now, that has been bought off by the private interests who built up all this stuff. This was probably quite a pretty building in its day. A little bit of Gothic, I think, thrown in with a couple others, but maybe just the Gothic, and a cool new roof or attic floor put in. I don't know what this museum is, but Tolerantios Center sounds like Tolerance Center. I think the street I'm on, which is very windy, typifies the Jewish ghetto area. A few feet away, this poster, like in Duh, excerpt from list of Vilna ghetto prisoners, 1942. The iron-hearted wish to spend much time figuring out what happened to these men. The story is too potentially horrible. Simply interpret this as a highly efficient, mass-produced death warrant. This is another portrayal of the plan of the Vilna ghetto, or where the red dot is right now. Look at these faces, the closeness of the family, the implied contentment of the time that photo was taken. And imagine the horrors that this family went through before it each died. The value of these photos here and everywhere in the world is they put a face to a travesty. They allow us to empathize with the individuals who were crucified. Why are we such a shallow intelligence that we can single out some people as scapegoats? See movies like Anne Frank or The Pianist and others that illustrate these kind of circumstances. I try to imagine the people sleeping in those rooms up there, perhaps in the middle of the night, as the Soviets or the Nazis or whomever showed up in their trucks and soldiers banging on doors and entering, throwing people into the streets with whatever they wore to be hauled off for a month of travel to the death camps. Appear to be in somewhat of an older neighborhood. Ghetto perhaps to my back. I've now entered into the compound of the Vilnius Church of the Holy Spirit. Like most everything in this city, it's had a varied history. Here's a picture of the layout during the 14th to the 18th century. But the crypts are over here, but we don't have access to those. Also contains a substantial catacomb area that is still now being excavated archaeologically by students. Some of the bodies mummified naturally, etc. Go online and read. I'll have to figure out somehow a way to decipher what we're looking at. If it weren't a church, it'd look like an abandoned warehouse. And there to the right, still another church. Which is the one we seek, I don't know. Like over the doorway, there are faint hints of the paintings that used to cover this facade. and now worn away, or even the cement that covered them has worn off. I think the graphic that we get from this bricks are from truly black bricks. But what do the graphics indicate? Notice it's different there than what we see over there. And here, until we get up above, and then it just seems the occasional random brick. There's prior arches, or at least niches, most likely where an important icon was displayed. Ironically, the side of the church seen only from this parking area, seems like, is the one that's restored. Maybe it's just the start. Second building, if in fact it's all a church, doesn't seem realistic, is more interesting, although in what ways I'm not quite sure. Whatever it is, it looks like it's been converted to business use. It's supposed to have an interesting interior, but I don't know when we get to see it, if ever. If this is the alternative to abandoning the church, like several that I've seen, it's a good alternative. Who knows what its ultimate history will be? It's already checkered enough. This is the appearance of a monastery. Apparently at one time, there was an important woman who came from Italy. Don't know whether she was a queen or whatever, but she had some clout. And she introduced the Italian Gothic, I think, which was these, what were then open arch areas, as we saw in a church earlier this week. But because of the temperature here, unbeknownst to her sense of realism, they filled all of these in against the cold. The length of these corridors suggests that there were some very impressive either chapels or rooms or study rooms or whatever here. Last remnant of an earlier day. Peek outside. This is a typical design for a monastery, having this central courtyard, where ordinarily where we're standing would have been called the cloister, perhaps, because it was all open. Looks like there are either sound stages for the film crews that work out of here now, or stages for performances of other sorts, who knows. It's a rather modest height of these doors now. They're just almost fine for me, so they would have been more than adequate for an earlier day as rooms for monks, perhaps. Large room, now seemingly the only religious element left within this building. Maybe an analogy for religion and the churches in Vilnius and in the Western world. The remnant of the older building left for us to view. Notice this little piece of hardware to hold something in place, or to attach something. I wonder if the parts that are exposed have a particular archaeological, architectural significance. I don't know what that would be. Appears one of these large rooms is used as a ballet studio. This is a picture of the layout during the 14th to the 18th century. But the crypts are over here, but we don't have access to those. I'm going to go upstairs now because she indicated there might be something up here of interest, so we'll go see if there is. A nice job of converting this. Hopefully it'll be a successful venture. It may actually underwrite the restoration of the church. Now, there's a concept. It's a difficult task, though. It is an old structure.